Hi, this is Geoff Berry, and welcome to the Nature Calling channel, where we aim to deepen connection to the earth and to the spirit of life and to all our kin on this beautiful planet.
So welcome everybody to this IES webinar offered today by Geoff from IES Australia. And
Yes.
I would like that we can start quickly, as we had to wait already a bit. And I would invite Geoff to present himself. As always, better you know what you want to share about yourself. And please go ahead. We are waiting for your inspiration.
Thank you so much, Anne. Thanks for the invitation and for setting all of this up and bringing us all together, because a large part of what I would love to do is to speak about community, to speak about community leadership, and to include more than human nature in the way we think about community. The focus of this presentation is about becoming elders. It's something that has always fascinated me, and I would like to add, I'll go across to some slides so that we can keep like some small amounts of points in focus. But I would like to add that my main aim is to introduce the idea of having elders in the community to non-Indigenous, non-tribal, non-traditional communities. So in modern society, I think it's something we lack. So in traditional Indigenous societies, as I'm sure we're all aware, we would have a circle of elders that would help to make wise decisions, that would help to teach, that would help to initiate, that would help to lead with compassion and with knowledge of the community and the more than human environment. And too often today, we don't have that. So what I'm really trying to do is just draw from those traditional models, both the existing ones today from Australian Aboriginal and other Indigenous societies, and also to draw from anthropological models and even emergent models like Joanna Macy's, so that we can start to think, how might we step into the roles of becoming elders? And so partly also I want to support people to not be too afraid of that, because I think sometimes we have an ideal of the elder being this supremely wise being, and how could I possibly become one of those people? I'm going to speak to that as well, because that could potentially stop us from helping to lead our communities. So I'll go across to my slides as a way of helping the conversation. Well, you know what? Let's go off script. Seeing as technology has sent us off script, one of the things that I think we're going to have to get more used to in life is frustrations. So as I was actually saying just before it collapsed, the original title for this presentation was Becoming Earth Elders for End Times. And what I've been noticing, as clearly we're in some kind of systemic breakdown process, many people would argue a sixth mass extinction event. I would say that's well underway. Societal collapse and ecosystem breakdown are things that I personally think we need to get more comfortable with, but they're very uncomfortable. And I've noticed that as they become less cognitive and more embodied in our planetary systems, geopolitics, as well as the obvious climate chaos that's been increasing, is that it's increasingly difficult to stay calm and compassionate and generous. And so actually a really relatively minor frustration, like a 15 or 20-minute delay on an international Zoom call, or paying more for our fuel, which I don't know what it's like in Europe at the moment, but it's just doubled in price in a couple of weeks here. They're just really small factors compared to what's coming. And I don't like to press into that too much anymore because I've tried hard to talk about collapse and I don't think I've really succeeded. And I think that what I've come to learn, and this will come up as we go, is that ultimately it hasn't made very much difference at all to what I teach or the way that I try to live. Because the way that people like ourselves, people who are interested in eco-psychology especially, want to live is in connection and in relationship with more than human nature. And I think that's still the most important thing we can be doing. And especially if you have a Buddhist framework or really any other kind of um, moral compass, the idea of compassion and forgiveness and gratitude practices should all also just be part of what we're doing. So whether or not we're doing them because we can tell that times are getting worse and leadership is required to make sure that this is the way we respond, not with panic and anger, but with holding out the hand of community and trying to take care of the planet, um, whether collapse is increasingly in impact going faster and getting worse or not actually doesn't hasn't changed what I do in my everyday life. If anything, it's made me slow down more and it's made me take it more seriously. But yeah, off script. There's our start. Now we'll start. Let's see what happens. So I'm just going to go down the thumbnail slides. I'm not going to mess with the slideshow again, just in case. Um, Acknowledgement of country. Here in Australia, we really like to start meetings by paying respect to the Indigenous, what we call traditional owners or knowledge holders. I'm presenting to you from Yuin country, which is on the far south coast of New South Wales, southeast Australia. And I'd like to pay my respect and appreciation to the traditional owners, to the elders, of course, who've led those societies through thousands of generations and tens of thousands of years, but also to all the people that cared for country. And so when we have a look at what I think are three of the major things we'll need to do as we step towards becoming Earth elders, two of them are probably still applicable universally, but the third one, changing consciousness, is something that is definitely more required than ever for modern society, but something that traditional people don't require at all because they're coming from the kind of consciousness that we want to be working from. So we'll come to that momentarily. So I offer you also the opportunity to just breathe in your respect for the people who have taken care of the country you live on, wherever you are, just for a moment. Okay, so what are some of the key takeaways? I am going to flip through the slides a little quicker than I might have, but I'm really comfortable doing that because I want to keep this simple. And I noticed today, I thought I should be studying more for this presentation. I should be thinking more. I should be refining it more. And you know what? I just couldn't do it. Every single time the beautiful sunshine and the breeze kept calling me outside and said, maybe not. Maybe you should keep this really simple and from the heart. And maybe you should remember what this is really all about. So hopefully you'll get some of these takeaways, and maybe I'll post the slides and my notes elsewhere so that you can keep up with some of the more the work that went into it somewhere else. So I want to look at eldership as wisdom, compassionate wisdom, and not necessarily something that comes with age. I want to talk about initiation and ritual as a part of the way that we step into leadership and not just some informal process of going along the steps. Nested circles of care. So what can we take care of? Eco-dharma, as well as eco-tuning, so adding a little bit of my Buddhist framework in there. And then finally talking about how we can stay grounded and awake and connected beyond the noise, or as I started to realize, what I really meant was beneath the noise, letting all the noise of modern society keep on going, nothing we can do about it, but just staying a little bit beneath it. And ultimately, my aim is to explore how we, as modern individuals, can step into or towards eldership in our own ways, in our own places. So I'm trying to offer a very skeletal framework, a very basic model that can be applied anywhere. And of course, then it's up to us to take that into our own places. So first of all, and I will offer a little time for a conversation amongst yourselves in breakouts if we still have room, or maybe we'll just take that into the conversation for the last bit of time that we have. We'll see how that goes. But first of all, eldership as wisdom. When I looked around at what it is to become an elder, I went first of all back to the classic book, The Wisdom of the Elders by Peter Knudsen and David Suzuki, which is a really, yeah, I mean, that's been around for decades now. And as you would expect, still seems chock full of wisdom. But looking more at the psychological frameworks that are applicable to modern society and especially to a disintegrating structure of modern society, I came across some really good points, such as psychologist Caroline Baker pointing out that at this point in time, elders basically needs to include anyone who feels called to become a steward of culture. And she talked about anyone that's mature enough to get real about what it takes to be a steward of culture. That could include a grief counselor or a therapist, eco-tuner, of course. Anyone who's prepared to, in her phrase, grow themselves up to be able to face what's really happening and not keep retreating into escapist fantasies that we see most of the time in mainstream media, can think of themselves as an elder. Uh, and I found that really helpful. I know in my local communities here, my Aboriginal communities around here, Ewan, and many Aboriginal communities, elders will often be chosen quite young and will be initiated specifically towards eldership. But of course, you won't be known as an elder until you've gone through all of the rites. And I do think that a long apprenticeship is worthy. I probably feel like I've been working intellectually for a long time, but I don't feel like wisdom is really something I've ever had much of a handle on until my 50s. So, obviously, there's a lot of people a lot more mature than I. Definitely wouldn't use myself as the barometer, but it's not just age, but I think that still has something to do with it. So a friend of mine down here, an Aboriginal man I worked with quite a lot, Brian DeVries, I asked him, he was great. He said, you can ask me any question you like about Aboriginal culture, no matter how naive or ignorant. And so I asked him, what's the difference between an old person and an elder in Aboriginal communities? And he said, it's very simple. It's the people who serve. So if they're serving the community, then they work, then we treat them as elders. Um, So I thought that was really neat. And again, something I wanted to keep, the idea of service to the more than human community. Elders having a special place in society, I think that's something we all need to support a bit more. In the West, there is still a strong sense that youth is more vibrant and attractive, and old people are kind of kept out of the limelight. So I think that coming back to the idea that elders should have a special place in society and be known for their expertise in having spiritual relationships with life should be really helpful. I had a whole lot of information on um, some native uh, academics and writers who were working on this, Aboriginal Australians and North Americans who were talking about people like medicine people and shamans as scientists. And I think it's also important for us to think of people like climate scientists as people who can have wisdom, especially if they're trying to educate the rest of us. And also elders as leaders in community transition. So who is going to help us to deal with anything in everyday life, regardless of the situation of societal collapse, grief, big changes, things like that? I think that elders as leaders in community transitions is a really important role that we need to keep in mind. So, what kinds of transitions, or what can we do with transitions to help us, if we choose to do so, to try and become more like Earth elders, or also to support those who might want to? I want to look at using things like initiation rituals in a broader perspective. We commonly think of initiation rituals as things like going through puberty, going from child to adult, maybe getting married, things like that. But in all my studies, I've noticed that ritual can be used for any transition. And also, I found that elders go through extensive ongoing initiations into becoming elders, becoming the types of elders they are. So I thought we could just look at ritual technologies as a part of how we do this. How do we get towards eldership? And starting with the aim or the intent, what is it that we want to get towards? So I'm just starting with the basics. How can we become compassionate leaders with a spiritual relationship to life, including the human and the more than human community? That would be an example of my aim. Then just using the basic model of a ritual process, setting up a threshold, making sure I have a concrete process. This is not just something I'm daydreaming about, but actually having concrete rituals that say I'm going to cross the threshold from my everyday assumptions of consensus consciousness into a liminal space where I can get the messages and the teachings from the earth and from the ancestors, from my animal totems, from my guides. I really need to open up my whole body, mind, and heart and soul to this process of becoming an elder. And then inviting in the liminal, whatever message might come. For me, I try to keep that absolutely open because I don't know if it's going to be an animal totem or a mythic figure or just an ancestor that might want to say, or even just a feeling in my body that says, this is what you have to do next. Like I had today, don't study harder for this. Just keep on feeling connected. And then also having the courage and the faith to take that message, to make it concrete, to bring it back, and to share it. Because ultimately, the difference that we want to make is communal. We need to share the wisdom. We need to have a little courage. So, first of all, we have a community, hopefully, we're comfortable with, so we can share that message, whatever we get with people. And if not, we look for that community. I say community building should be something we're consciously working towards. So, my last couple of notes around transitions, I was always very struck by Paul Shepard's book, Nature and Madness, where he consecutively noted through the history of the West how we'd been robbed of our rituals and our initiatory processes. So for me, this is a process of reclaiming, taking his guide of what we've lost and saying, well, I want that back. And then also Waldron, that was from a Canadian Aboriginal study that was cited in an Australian Aboriginal study, was talking about getting beyond restorative healing, which, especially with the Australian school of IES, we work a lot with ecotherapy as well as eco-tuning under the umbrella of applied ecopsychology. But I really liked Waldrom's point that this is about transformative healing. This isn't just healing wounds. This is about growth into a whole new kind of space we need to be a part of. Okay, nested circles of care. So my number one rule for when I think about what I can possibly do is I remember the Serenity Prayer. May I be granted the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, like climate chaos and overseas wars, the courage to change the things I can, like the way I'm thinking about something or the things I offer my community, either locally or online, and the wisdom to know the difference. Because sometimes I think we can get a bit lazy and think, oh, well, I can't change that. I mean, it's true about things like climate change in the bigger picture and overseas wars. But sometimes if we're brave, we can change things we don't know we can change. And anyway, it's always worth trying your best. I listened to a very inspiring lecture on the radio today about universal human rights. And the person was saying how even though a couple of cases had failed, had lost in the Supreme Court, people had heard about those cases and gone and started their own cases to defend human rights and won. So even sometimes if we think we're not changing, maybe we are. And then my second rule for nested communities, what I can change, where I can make a difference, is the old Friends of the Earth slogan: think globally, act locally. What's best for the planet, for the Earth system, but what can I do right here? And sometimes that could just be weeding. We have a really fantastic local land care organization, and they share what weeds are coming up that are invasive and damaging and what they're doing about them. And then when I go for my walks, I can pull those weeds out as well. Just a very, very small example. But in the end, nested circles are about deepening our connections with our interpersonal communities, both in person where we live and online, like this, and trying always to remember to include the more than human. So today that's been very strong for me. As I said, just being called outdoors and looking at the sun and feeling the wind rather than trying to think harder. And I've used some work by Dacia Narvaez. She writes about the evolved nest as a beautiful way of raising children based on traditional modes. But the other thing about nested circles of care I really need to mention, because we do have some exceptional Western elders, and the first person I want to mention I already have is Joanna Macy, and her three rules for what is worth doing. Number one, holding actions, slowing down the destruction, and trying to protect the local forest or something like that. And these are all things, this one, especially the Iroquois Confederacy in British Columbia, Canada, wrote very eloquently about in The Wisdom of the Elders. Holding actions, life-sustaining practices, so redesigning how we do things to be more sustainable, more renewable. And I mean that in terms of renewable energy projects, but also maybe inviting people in our community to seasonal celebrations. This is something I do several times a year. I just go to a local forest and I put the word out and I say, anyone that wants to come for an equinox or a solstice celebration, and then I can weave eco-psychology into that. And I'm building a little community around here. It's humble, but it feels great. So holding actions, life-sustaining practices, and then the one we need the most that the Indigenous people, of course, don't need at all is the shifting consciousness to dissolve our seeming separation from life. And I think that that's the thing that gave me a headache every time I looked at a screen earlier today, was remembering that I'm already enough. And if I stay connected, this will go okay. And then our tech issues, again, don't expect the mechanical society that we've built to keep working for us. Keep on digging in beneath that and looking for that consciousness that's always there for us that says you're already connected, you're already enough. Just try and shift away from the bad habits and keep coming back to the better habits you know exist. All right, so that's my little nested circles. I wanted to mention just briefly, Eco Dharma is something that I'm working with more nowadays, trying to bring Zen and psychology closer together all the time. In my eco psychology teaching, I've probably mainstreamed my language a little bit to talk about mindfulness in nature. It's not a phrase I used to use, but a lot of people are aware of that kind of language nowadays. And writers like Gary Snyder, he's probably my favorite American poet and Zen philosopher, very much into the Dharma and into nature. So, but the thing I've noticed, the more I look into the wisdom teachings of the Dharma, is that mindfulness is very much about staying centered. And it's very often very connected to nature. The Buddha became enlightened under a tree. There was already an urban agricultural civilization in North India at the time, but the ascetics, the monks, were always going out into the forest to meditate. Decentering the self is something that I try to do, and I find paradoxically makes me stronger and a better teacher. Just trying to decenter out of the idea of myself as an individual and just listen to the song of the earth. So the eco tuning is almost coming through me, and then I can say, okay, what is needed in this place, in this time for this person or this group? What will be the wisdom? And maybe an eagle will fly over, or maybe a tree will start to sway, or maybe nothing will happen, and that nothingness, that emptiness will lead the group somewhere. But always trying to decenter this Western idea of an individual, which doesn't make much sense. And looking at the eco-dharma, so mindfully dissolving ego attachment, but not the idea of a self. Yes, Geoff, Anne, Francesca, Sylvia, Jen, just the top of my grid here. We're all important. We still are individuals. We still have agency. It's not that there's no self, it's that there's no attachment to self. And I find this can be a really powerful way of setting ourselves towards something like being compassionate leaders. Yeah, sometimes I fall for the old, well, there's no self, so I don't have to do anything, or I have no role to play. But really, that's a misread of the Dharma. We still have to do, we still have to act with agency and compassion. We still have to do good work and good speech and so on and so forth. And this aligns between the beginner's mind of Zen, the open, curious awe at life, and the eco-tuning of opening our senses and attuning ourselves to more than human nature. They can work together really nicely. And then finally, I wanted to look at staying grounded, awake, and connected beneath the noise, and using a Taoist framework, looking for both transcendence, a bigger picture, being outside of my own personal life and my own immediate situation, but also trying to drop even deeper into myself, into soul, into immanence, into really being here and being present so that I can play my part. So I think there's a beautiful paradox that's available to us there. And again, if we're simply not attached to ego or individual outcomes, we can do this. These are things we can do. They don't need to be highfalutin. We can respect the fact all of us have a bigger picture and all of us have a deep soul depth, and we can move into that space, that paradoxical, beautiful, open space, and tap into both of those things whenever they're necessary. In the body, in the mind, and the world, and the community, but not of it, not identifying with our individual needs, because those will certainly be taking, they will lead to suffering, if you like. The unending process of deepening into service, ritualizing those state changes, so unlearning poor habits and concrete and making real the better habits as an aspect of a stage change. So fire it till you wire it, keeping the process always happening. This can really give you a lot of staying power. I think that's something I've had to learn. I had a burnout a couple of years ago, and coming out of that, what the main thing that I learned was just stay humble and keep doing what you know you should be doing, but don't be trying so hard that you end up, spending all of your energy. And finally, having faith. Not that everything's going to be okay, because it isn't, but actually having faith that if you keep tapping into your wisdom and to the wisdom of the more than human community, and if you keep asking, what would an elder do? How could I be a better leader for my community? What can I share? So it doesn't necessarily have to be leadership from the top up. We can all be leaders if we share in a circle. That's what the elders do, right? What can I share in my circle that will help these things, either a holding action or a consciousness change or a life-sustaining practice? Then we can unfold with flow. And I've really noticed that for myself. If I just come back to those things, they're both humble and great, and they really help. And then how I was hoping to finish my summary, my invitation to reflect. So I'll check in with Anne how we'd like to do this, because we are a little behind the timing that I had an idea of. But here were my questions that I wanted to leave you with. In terms of aligning applied eco-psychology and the current unfolding of the planet, wherever you are in whatever way that's happening, what is the need? In order to respond to the need that's around you, and this is what good elders do, they respond to a need with a compassionate spiritual relationship. What lands with you? So out of all this stuff, we've done a little bit of a flying visit of what I think are some of the helpful aspects towards becoming good elders for the earth. What landed with you? For some people, it will be finding more time to step off the rat race wheel. For others, it might be the life-sustaining practices. Whatever it is that lands for you is the thing that you're meant to hear at the moment and take up. And what part do you want to play in sharing wisdom or compassion or life-sustaining practices? And finally, and I add this because I come across it so often, people saying, I don't have a community. So if you don't have a community of souls that you can connect with, reach out and look around. The IES is a great place to start, and it's just great that we have, several schools around the world that you can join in on. And maybe you just put your hand up or put an invitation out and go to your community and say, hey, does anyone want to do a seasonal celebration? Does anyone want to get together and just feel into a space? Or does anyone want to come down to that forest that they're talking about chopping down and see if we can have a look at protecting some of it? There are things we can do, and what I've noticed is that when we overcome separation, then we remember we're part of a matrix. And when we're part of a matrix, we're part of a community. There's always something we can do, and it will nourish your soul. And if it nourishes your soul, then you're working your way towards becoming an elder for the earth. And I think we can do this for ourselves and for our communities, regardless of the outcomes. So that's how I would like to end, Anne.
Thank you so much, Geoff. It has been so beautiful, so many inspiration. I think you made kind of pathway for us, and with many hope in it, that although many is happening in the world, we still can mean something. And for me, it's more the community, the value of the community and our place in it, and sitting in a circle and share what you have to give from who you are, and take up our responsibility there and invite others. What I would suggest, because we started later, very sorry for what happened, and I would like, if it's possible, for Geoff to keep us that space. And who has to leave? Of course, thank you for being with us. Just leave us a little message how you enjoyed the webinar. That's always nice to receive. And if you want to stay with us, I would like to open the space with the questions of Geoff, and what you, or maybe also if you have another question coming forth of that you would like to ask Geoff. I propose to leave the space open like this and not to go in breakout rooms. Is that okay for you, Geoff?
Yeah, I think so, Anne. I think, yeah.
So you can open with the hand of Francesca.
Floor is open. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Hello. Thank you, everyone. This is the first time that I joined to an IES conversation webinar, so I'm very happy to do this. And I teach environmental psychology and also ecopsychology, a bit of ecopsychology in a course at university. And I feel also that the community of the students is a community where I share scientific knowledge and that can empower them. The question that I have also is how can we transform also our psychotherapeutic practice in a more ecotherapy, practice, and this individually. But another question is also how can we be an empowered community, all of us, no, that IS and community of eco leaders, no, elders, as you said. How can we join nowadays, no? To create something together, not just individually, because every one of us, I think, does a lot. But if we are together, we can do more and more. How can we
Mm.
do something to sustain life in also in a political sense? Currently, I'm also busy to defend the land here in Tuscany because they are deciding to enlarge the military bases and to deforest to do a big, massive deforestation.
Mm.
So this is a political action, but how can we be as a psychologist also involved together in
Yeah.
a concrete, a political also action?
Yeah, thank you very much, Francesca. Those are very real things happening on your doorstep. I think in terms of the um, forest defense activism, you're just going to have to find out who's already out there and join forces, and find out what's already going on and whether or not you can just, like I said, the first thing you should do when you find out a place is endangered is go and visit it and ask it. Sit there. Because too often we stay in the cognitive and the political and the that's wrong, and then we're getting caught up in dualism and antagonism. So maybe spend some time there and find out who else is ready to try and protect it. Because in the end, nothing is wasted. If you try and protect a piece of forest and you fail and it gets cut down, sure, nothing seems to have happened objectively, but you've done a beautiful thing and the forest will be aware that you tried. You got to try something. In terms of empowered communities, um, maybe with the IES, we have to set up a new forum. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing yet, but we might be able to set up a conversational forum where we talk about how we become better elders. This could be the start of something. I know
Yes.
Tina
Yep.
last year
We
started.
are we are busy with setting up communities of practice,
Yeah,
and this could be a question.
could be one of them.
Yes.
Okay, there you go. So we'll follow through with that, and I'll keep my eyes on that too, Francesca. Thank you. And then in terms of, look, I'm going to keep it really simple because I think that's what works. And I think sometimes we miss the simple stuff. You're talking about talking about scientific education and more mainstream psychology and how we can make that become more like ecotherapy. The first thing you can do is you can take your therapy outdoors or at least open a window or check in with what's happening where you and the client or you and the group are and see if you can find a safe and easy way just to take it into nature or bring nature into it. But the main thing I've learned, I've tried so many different angles. In the end, the thing is what used to be known as phenomenology and experience is actually just taking people, let's just say they're scientists, they're psychology students, corporates, I don't care who, any group of human beings that you can take and sit in a circle under a tree and ask them to see if they can just allow their minds to relax and feel their bodies on the ground and breathe in and be really thankful for the breath. Like, really remember what it's like to be alive with nothing else, shorn of all comfort, and just be there. And maybe get some really basic meditation practices, like every time a thought comes up, thank you, not now. Simplest thing possible. Thank you, not now. Not berating the ego, not judging the self, but just saying, I get it. I've got a strong ego. It served me well. I get it. I've got a monkey mind because I'm a socialized human being. That's fine. But right now, can I just have a break and breathe under this tree and then share? You can get fantastic outcomes with people and you can really surprise them and you can hopefully bring them to tears or remind them what it's like to have a childlike curiosity about a bug on a leaf. Start with that
Yeah,
because there's
thank you. I do
you
above
do
all
that.
when I can't go out. I do mindfulness inside the class also, not just
Mm.
for my group of psychotherapy because it's very useful to feel that we are nature, no, our body is
Yeah.
nature. Mm.
And another good trick is memory. Just that, you know, if you're in a room and there's no other way of doing it, and you've done some mindful breathing, whatever, just ask someone when they did feel really connected, maybe as a kid, to
Yeah.
nature, and they can open that part of their heart back up.
Yes, like in Joanna Macy work, no, work that reconnects. There are.
Mm.
Uh,
Yeah, she's great.
uh,
There's a couple of things. Who else would like to be a part of this conversation?
Maybe a reaction on one of the questions that Geoff
Mhm.
asked. What is it that you could share in your community? Even maybe you don't have certain community. Jen.
I don't have a question, but I do want to join the conversation. And
Thanks.
also, this is my first webinar that I'm joining, and I'm very happy to be here. And as always, Geoff, your words are full of wisdom, simplicity, and practicality, and I just love it. I got a lot out of what you shared. The
Awesome.
probably to the biggest message and the take home for me is simply the possibility of being an elder. It
Mm,
hadn't occurred to me, and the way you've reframed that, or the way I've heard it as a reframe for me,
mm,
now sits as a very real possibility because I do have wisdom and I do have a lot of heart, I guess is
mm.
the only way I can think to say it,
Yeah.
that has value in the times coming ahead. And to sit in that possibility of being available and in service is
Mm.
just a beautiful thought for me. So thank you.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Oh, I couldn't have hoped for a better response. Thanks, Jen, because you've, as so often is the case in groups, you've pinpointed something that I hadn't even really consciously thought of enough, which is simply the possibility that we can step into this. Like for so many of us, well, I think I did mention it, but yeah, the idea of an elder is this wise old traditional person around a campfire. I couldn't possibly be one of those. Well, no, you can't because we don't have traditional relationships with where we live. But you can be in service of the Earth community, and anyone involved in the IES almost inevitably already is. So, yeah, thank you. I just wanted to set up a platform that we can step towards, regardless of age, and say, hang on a minute, if we don't do this, we're letting ourselves and our communities down. And we're only letting ourselves down because of a lack of imagination, because this is possible. Thanks, Jim.
Max, you're still muted. I think you would like to join the conversation. Yes.
Yeah, I actually wasn't, but yeah, that's fine. I was just doing this, but it's okay. I'm happy to say something. I think that on this subject of community, it's the way it works for me. It works at different levels. We live at a time in which we are multi-layered. We have communities in person and we have communities online. This is how it sort of pretty much operates right now. So for instance, I feel myself as part of several communities. One of which is certainly the IES, where we are right now. But another couple of them that I consider very important in my case, it's the work that I do both with, well, I work as a nature guide, but also I have trained as an ecopsychologist more recently. So I work with mindfulness in nature, precisely. We do this kind of offering with a botanical garden in the UK, but also I am very much involved with men's work, and we also have introduced nature work. I have a little bit within that circle, and interestingly, when we work within the men's circles, we do speak of elders, and the elders would be those that hold the circle, basically, in a different capacity, in different ways. And personally, what I am trying to do within this kind of network is to introduce nature-based work a little bit more, because it really goes, hand in hand with all the other things we are offering. So yeah, that's my contribution. Thank you.
Thanks, Max. One of the things you said there that I think frames really well around this whole idea of eldership is when you mention that, when you're in men's groups, and I have seen this in men's groups too. No, I don't have much to do with them, but I think they're really important, is in that community, you will speak of elders. And I think it's specifically because it's a very conscious community and you're growing consciousness. And so elders all of a sudden becomes a part of the conversation. Whereas in the wider community, you're unlikely to hear it. So I think that just shows the benefit of setting up these conscious communities like men's or groups or women's groups or whatever they are. The one I'm doing around here, I live in a very lightly populated area, a lot of nature, not many people. So I get very small groups, 5 to 12 on average for my seasonal celebrations. But it's still just a lovely little way to bring those people that want to do that stuff together. And I didn't even know they were there. I don't know the people that are coming to my seasonal celebrations from before I started to advertise them. So that's one thing I would like to add too, is that if you look around, if you just post into somewhere in your community that you're going to do something, sure, you might only get 1 or 2 people at first. I think 5 is my smallest, 12 is my biggest in this local community. But it's like, I didn't know these people were there. All of a sudden, there's someone there saying, "Oh, I've been waiting for this. I love nature and I love mindfulness, and I thought there was no one else around." So then there's 5 people saying, "I thought there was no one else around," and now we all have something to do a few times a year. It's amazing.
Posso? Riuscite a leggere i sottotitoli? Io parlo italiano. Ok? Ciao a tutti e grazie mille di questa opportunità. Mi ricollego molto al tuo discorso della semplicità e dell'apertura di cuore e vorrei così raccontarvi di un'esperienza che ho vissuto settimana scorsa e che mentre tu, Geoff, parlavi mi è apparsa come un lampo durante un temporale estivo così bello. Mi trovavo in Lapponia in un'escursione in una foresta e durante l'escursione si parlava della connessione con la natura. Io ho raccontato che questa è la mia professione e le persone presenti, eravamo un gruppo di 8, mi hanno chiesto semplicemente così dal nulla di poter fare un'attività di riconnessione, di poter fare un qualcosa che le sentisse che facevano parte di un tutto. E quindi così con la semplicità della presenza, senza che noi ce lo fossimo preparati e lasciando fare alla natura, abbiamo creato una situazione bellissima e molto profonda. Quindi io credo che per essere anziana io abbia bisogno di lasciare che il mio cuore sia aperto all'ascolto di ciò che mi arriva anche dalla natura e da queste relazioni che noi che stiamo coltivando e che arrivano perché servono e quindi essendo aperti è comunque un cibo nutriente per noi stessi.
Mhm.
Quindi grazie mille, così molto in sintonia.
Thank you, Sylvia. Oh, wow. Instant translation as Zoom captions is incredible. I can't believe I could just understand you. That is so wonderful. Um, incredible, really. Um, yeah, you know what I'm learning more is trust the field is my easy phrase for it. If I don't need to know what I'm doing as much anymore. Now, fair enough, I've done a lot of work, so I do know what I'm doing in general. But in any specific moment, I don't need to know an answer. The main thing I can do in the kinds of situations you're talking about is just open up, is to drop the ego, mind, and voice and just open up to the field, whether it is literally the field of outdoors or not, and see what happens. And it's incredible the wisdom that comes through, the message, the accurate messages for the right people at the right time. But the other thing, Sylvia, I wanted to say was, I'm not sure I got this part right, but you know, getting old is not that much fun. I'm not that far down the track. I don't think my 50s is really old or anything, but I can feel it coming, and I want something to make it worth it. And I know you said something about getting older, and I didn't really focus on that in the presentation, but I think if we're gonna get older, we should ask for some wisdom also.
Io intendevo, ho utilizzato la parola anziano, ma per me l'anziano è una giovinezza consapevole, molto gioiosa e viva.
Great. That's fantastic. But we have to choose that too. We have to keep choosing to keep our minds open and to be alive with nature's energy. It's easy not to do that. So you're making that decision. Maybe your part of an eldership circle is to keep sharing that energy so the people around you can be infected by your good energy, and that will have a lot of great benefits in your community. I'm aware sometimes we make assumptions, and sometimes we make assumptions that are quite negative and critical, but sometimes we make assumptions where we ignore the good qualities that we have because we think they're normal. So Sylvia's going, yeah, but getting old, you can still have joyful energy. And it's like, well, not everyone's saying that. So that might be a great message for you to keep sharing.
Thank you. Geoff, we have a question from someone who just cannot talk now, but she asks a question in the chat. What does it mean to keep in mind that we are part of a matrix? We think we
Yeah,
mean matrix on a global and territorial level.
yeah. Well, I can speak to that both in immediate and transcendent because there's not a separation. Um, for me, my main studies were myth. The main thing I did was I studied myth, the really big picture ideas of all societies, ancient, modern, indigenous, technological. And if you look at the core creation myths, including Buddhism and Aboriginal Australian, they you got to go back to the earliest written records so you can get behind it into the very, very ancient oral traditions. And they nearly always feel the universe as a flow of consciousness and matter with no separation. So it's not as if there's a material world and a consciousness world. Life is a wavelength, and consciousness is a part of it. And we're very lucky to be human and to awaken to consciousness. But the consciousness is a part of the matrix. So for me, when I feel myself as part of the universe, when I let go of separation and dissolve into the flow, so the Taoist flow of nature, the birds, the trees, the stars, the rivers, the grass, that's like a flow of energy that's been going for billions of years over billions of light years of space. But it's one flow of energy. Everything is on this wave of life that's not separate. So for me, the matrix is everything. We're a part of a matrix. And somehow in Western societies, and I looked into the somehow, so I know a lot about the somehow, but it's not that important right now. In lots of ways, we got socialized to accept that we are these individuals that are separate from the flow of the natural universe. And it's just not true. So the matrix is the flow of life, the day and the night cycles, the moon cycles, the rain, the droughts, the way grass and plants grow, the way animals forage, who we are, the whole modern world, including all of its problems. This is all a flow of life. The matrix is everything. And of course, the word is very closely related to mata, to matter, to the mother. All the traditional societies see the universe coming out into life, just like we are born out of the mother. Why so many people talk about the Mother Earth, and so forth. So it's something that's both very gentle and intimate and physical and in our very life, in my experience of speaking and your experience of listening and vice versa. It's everywhere and all the time. And it's also the thing that we're just a little speck being carried on this gigantic universal flow of life. For me, that's the matrix.
Thank you, Geoff. I see it's a beautiful hour in our country, 11 past 11. And what is it for you?
Yeah, sure.
So, I think we could talk together for hours. I see Christian would like to ask one question. We will leave that one space more and then wrap up. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes. Okay.
Hi, Christiana.
Welcome.
I've been the whole time. I've been thinking about, I'm grateful for Jen highlighting, the potential, the possibility of being an elder, and I suppose sort of learning and going into the characteristics of an elder. On the other hand, part of me says it's presumptuous, without a ritual, without being named or allowed to be an elder by the community. It kind of feels a bit presumptuous to say I'm an elder.
That's fantastic. That's great. Thank you, Christiana. Yeah, I think we need to do the work. I really welcome that comment because A, getting old is not enough. B, maybe even a little bit of service is not enough. I think service and compassion and an attempt towards wisdom all needs to be a part of it. And maybe a ritual. You know what I would say? What a person said to me once, that's maybe helpful right now is actually this was in an Aboriginal context too. It's, does the community accept you as an elder? If you think you're an elder on your own behalf, but you're not actually doing any sharing or serving or being a part of a community, a leader or anything else, then are you an elder or are you just someone who thinks you're an elder? I actually think
That's exactly my question.
Yeah, well, then you have to be a part of a community and stepping up in order to be accepted as an elder. That's what an Aboriginal person would say. That's a bit harder for us, but I think we still need to keep it in mind.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's keep that conversation going. That's a rich one.
Absolutely. We don't close it. We just leave each other for some time.
Yeah.
We invite you to follow us. IES has more webinars to come. We'll share this before we close. We have the next one on 28th of April with Liana Orr. She is also a very wonderful woman who does beautiful work in Israel in times of war. And what she did with her practice is really amazing. So we have amazing people at IES. And thank you so much, Geoff, to be with us today and to share your inspiration. And we thank everybody here being with us. I think we all have, the fact we are here means a lot to us. Sharing the space and making difference.
Thanks, Anne. It's true too. Like just coming is a really big part of this. We can't keep on whistling into the wind. Yeah, we need other people to be a part of this too. So thank you so much. And of course, another thing Joanna Macy said, don't try and do it alone. So yeah, I'll make it for Liz. She's amazing, and hopefully we can keep this eldership conversation going in as many forums as possible.
Bye to all. Have a nice day. Have a nice night.
Bye for now. Thank you.
Thanks for watching, and please consider liking this video. And if you want more content like this, subscribe, and the Nature Calling bell will toll for you. This is Geoff signing off.